So here, today, we're going to be talking about what Symantec's doing around VDI, virtualization, application streaming, and enterprise mobility. So we're going to be covering those topics. So my name is Joseph Carson. I'm a product manager with Symantec, but I've came a long way. I probably came the furthest from anyone that's in this room. So actually, I know my accent is not American, so I'm actually from Belfast, from Ireland. But actually, I didn't even travel from Belfast, I came from further. So I live in Tallinn, Estonia. Does anyone know where Tallinn is, Estonia? Oh, well, a few people. Yeah, so some people, when I say Tallinn, Estonia, some people think, when I say Estonia, then they go Astoria, New York. And I'm like, no, Tallinn, Estonia. So Tallinn, Estonia is one of the Baltic states. So if you're familiar with things like Skype was invented here in Tallinn. So it's a very innovative country, very, very tech savvy, and we do everything through our mobile devices. We do electronic voting. So it's a very innovative country, and a lot of great innovations come out of the country. So that's where I came from to get to here. Did anyone come from further? Okay.
Here earlier this year.
You were there in Tallinn this year?
In Truro, did you say?
Tallinn.
Oh.
Yeah, this is Tallinn.
You said Truro.
I don't even know where Truro is.
Cornwall, yeah.
Okay. So we're here in fantastic Chicago. I love coming to Chicago. I hate the weather, but I love Chicago. And I'm just guessing, do we have anyone in the room who's from Chicago? Who's local? Okay. So I've got a couple of questions, because every time I come to a new city, and I like to learn a little bit about the location I'm coming to, so a little bit of interest. So I have some interesting facts about Chicago. So I'm hoping that you guys here that are from Chicago actually know these facts. So one thing is that out of all of the cities in the States, what is Chicago the largest out of those? What's the number? The largest city? What position is it out of these states?
We're number 3.
Oh, correct. So we got one person. So it's the third largest city in the States. And so it's quite a large location, a lot of people. And another interesting fact that we have is that the name Chicago is actually coming from the French name, interpretation of Miami, Illinois, which is Chicago. Did anyone know that? So it's an educational, so you're learning something new every day. So you're learning that it was actually where the Chicago name came from. Another interesting fact that I find was that it's actually boasts the 3 world's largest tall buildings, which is Sears, Amaco Building, and the John Hancock Tower. So a lot of tall buildings in Chicago. So you can tell people from Chicago walking around with their heads down, and tourists are like, it's like, my goodness. Another thing is that it's home to one of the last free zoos in the world. So while you're here, if you get the opportunity, go see the zoo in Chicago. It's one of the last free zoos that you have the opportunity to go see. And the last thing is, it's got the world's largest outdoor food fest. In Europe, we've got the Beer Fest. In Tallinn, we have the Song Festival. In Chicago, you've got the Food Festival. So, and another thing I like to learn about the cities I come to is interesting laws. What you're not allowed to do, because us tourists and people coming from abroad, we don't want to get in trouble. You go out and you go drinking and you enjoy yourself, and you want to make sure that you avoid anything that may put you in potential danger. So the first thing is, I'm not allowed to fly my kite in the city limits. So I made sure that I didn't pack the kite. So if you're going out tonight, you have a few drinks, don't bring your kite and don't fly in the city. You may end up in jail. So it's against the law to fly your kite in the city. It's also against the law to drink beer out of a bucket while sitting on the side of the curb. So if any of you find yourselves in a funny situation this evening, make sure you're not going to sit on the curb drinking out of a bucket, okay? Some people who may not be here today could have been, who were out drinking last night, could be sitting in jail because of this. It's also illegal to protest in front of City Hall if you're not under 17 years of age and you have a legal permit. So if you've got kids who are under 17, try and make sure they don't get any permits to protest. And it also forbids to eat in a place that's on fire. So you're not allowed to eat in anywhere that's in fire. So make sure that you could be prosecuted for eating in a restaurant that's on fire. And lastly, it's illegal to give a dog whiskey. Imagine
an Irish setter.
exactly. Imagine the dog's got a sore tooth. What are you going to get? Imagine the dog's got a toothache. What are you going to give it? So you'll have to leave Chicago or Illinois in order to give your dog whiskey. Okay. So, but this is not. I just thought it'd be interesting for those who are not from Chicago that you already knew this. But since you got the question right about the largest city, I have some Estonian sweets. So these are actually all the way from Tallinn. For somebody who got the question right, you're welcome. So we're here to talk about Symantec. And a lot of people here in the room probably know Symantec for different products and different feature sets. We're widely known for being a security company. Being the leading antivirus software, malware protection, et cetera, in the world. Also known for the Norton brand as well for the consumer side. We're also well known for our backup products and backing up data and making sure that the data is recoverable. But we're also very, very widely known as well for our virtualization technologies, our streaming technologies, and our mobility products as well, which help solve and help reduce the cost of actually enabling VDI. They help reduce the cost of license management, and also help enable you to manage your mobile devices and the applications on those mobile devices. So those are some of the technologies that we're here to try and educate you a little bit more about today, so you actually know more about those technologies that we're providing and what problems they're solving. So we have a little video here today, which we're going to show, which was done with Brian, to help try to tell you a little bit more about the technologies Symantec's providing that help reduce the cost of VDI.
Okay, we have to figure out what we're going to do for this Symantec video. Anybody have any ideas?
The thing is, they do so many different things. What are we going to focus on?
There's app virtualization,
Like
they have
enterprise mobility management?
app streaming,
BYOD.
VDI, yeah.
Okay, so since this is for BriForum, why don't we have a bunch of things where Brian does really embarrassing stuff?
Yeah.
We could get him on the street with one of those sandwich board signs and have like a megaphone, and he could be on the street telling everybody about how great Symantec app virtualization is.
Or they have this thing where they pre-configure an application to make them easier to deploy, like they're pre-cooked or something. So what if we have Brian throwing pre-cooked burritos out of the window or something?
We can't throw burritos at people.
Well, sure, they're cooked. They're not frozen.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that idea.
Okay, what if we have Brian running down the street with a Symantec kite behind him?
Yeah, like he's blown away that Symantec can virtualize IE 6, 7, and 9 all in the same box.
I don't know if that's that funny though. What if he's naked?
I love it.
Guys, no, nothing that can get me arrested.
Okay, well, if you don't want to get arrested, then instead, why don't we just put you in a drag? You can show how Symantec applications can fit in anywhere.
These ideas are getting ridiculous.
These are great ideas.
Really,
Do you have any better ideas?
I am not
These
doing
are
these
the ideas. You have to
You
do
want to do these
ideas.
ideas? This is such shit. Good luck doing these ideas without me.
So we're totally doing this without him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right.
And that's why Symantec virtual applications behave like regular applications. Take it from me, Brian Madden.
It was good, but next time try it a little bit more.
More arrogantly.
No, like a diva.
Yeah, and enunciate more of the weird
Wave
accents.
your arms all over the place.
And tell everybody how everything works all the time.
How do you feel about getting your ears pierced?
Hey guys, good news. I've decided to come back and help you out with the project.
Oh, great.
You know what? I have the perfect job for you.
So I'm wondering if he pretended that he was under 17 and he had a permit to run down the street naked in Chicago. So let's just give you a little kind of primer into some of the things that we're doing. At this point now, I'm going to switch over to one of my good friends, Steve Scott, who's going to provide you some of the information that he's done in success of rolling out a very large-scale VDI environment, and also some of the kind of lessons learned, some of the things that they found that was best practice scenarios. So I've introduced Steve to come up to the stage here.
Thanks, Joe. And so before I talk about myself, I was going to talk a little bit about Joe here too. He's what have you product manager about 4 months.
4 months. I've been the product manager for officially now it's 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah, 2 months of this product.
You can see his passion and the things that we've been looking for years that are getting done immediately. It's you can definitely see it and see the difference in the product.
Yeah, creating a full functional self-service portal in 3 weeks is impressive.
Yes,
so,
very.
so which we'll hopefully get to see a little bit today. So I'll pass this over to you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm Steve Scott, independent consultant. Just going to talk a little bit about, I used to work for a Fortune 10 company, large VDI project, and how we used the semantic tool sets to implement our VDI solution. Twitter, everything Bert, or my email there, steve@vtech.com. So for me, the reason I love this space and the reason I love end user computing, mobility, VDI is I love the mobility that it gives users, because at the end of the day, I am a user. So this is the view from my office. 90% of the time I spent working on the lake, being able to do everything that I can do in an office remotely. So most of my tool sets, Citrix, virtualization, all revolve around giving mobility to the user. For the business, I think the biggest thing is agility, right? And I'll talk about some ways that how Symantec help us gain that agility and some of the benefits we saw from that. So coming from a Citrix background, we've heard this forever, and now it seems to be a catchphrase. Honestly, this was written like a year ago before Microsoft and everybody started falling back on the it's all about the apps thing. But every Citrix admin knows that how many users can you get out of the box. It all depends on the applications, right? That's the same thing in a virtual desktop environment. Can you stand up 185 VMs on one blade? Sure, if it's just running IE and it's just like the Citrix environment. It depends on the applications and how many applications are running. So a little bit about the VDI project. One of the VDI projects I was involved in. End goal was around 50,000 seats. It actually grew from that. 9 sites. We definitely wanted to go with dynamic. And our end goal was to have cost equality at least with a physical desktop implementation. So one of the things after we had through this is we realized to be cost competitive with physical, we had to reduce our storage requirements. So a couple of ways to do those, right? We had storage deduplication, and this is a few years in the background, so the dedupe technologies were not near where they are today. There's some new things that come on just in this year that make that can be a feasible option. But depending on your solution, you're going looking at something with link clones or PVS, MCS type solutions, right? Depending on your vendor, Vue, or Citrix. So the problem with link clones and PVS is to really get your storage benefits that we're looking for, I have to consolidate down to a single image. And especially when I'm looking at a multi-site solution, every image that I have not only does it have to be, depending on the technology, on each one or on each data center, but I also need those replicas across the United States, across the world, wherever each one of those sites. So if I have 10 images and I have 10 sites, now I have to maintain 100 of those images, right, to maintain that environment. So the storage just spools on itself and gets bigger and bigger. So we looked at ways, how do I get to a single image? Well, could do all applications, just a base OS and publish to NZNAP. We knew that wasn't feasible, plus just licensing. Not only doing all the apps running in NZNAP, but adding additional licensing cost and the overhead of that, plus performance, right? We wanted users to have that locally installed feel. So we looked at application virtualization and streaming. So this is from Brian's book last year, the VDL Delusion. No application virtualization product is capable of virtualizing 100% of your applications. If you're in like Sean's session as a used car salesman, you can't get to a single image. I'd say that's definitely true with most virtualization vendors. And one is the big reason why we ended up going with Symantec, because we bought into the fairy tale. It was a requirement for the solution of our size and what we were looking for. So, and again, obviously if you're in here, hopefully now you know this bottom product by now. The problem is most of the application, when people talk about application virtualization, they think AppV, right? These are the products, the main products are out when we were looking at this. Secret streaming has pretty much been retired by now. You've got VMware ThinApp, Horizon, the old ThinStall, Microsoft AppV, the old SoftGrid technology. And just a little background here, I had been looking at these technologies for years since they were in their infancy. And I could never get management to buy in on the use case of how it would save us money, right? Why am I going to repackage all my applications? Why are we going to do all this to save money? And so at the end, I'll kind of summarize some of the things. Once we finally did this with VDI as a driver, how it ended up helping our whole organization. Okay, so we started this off with what we called our own application virtualization Smackdown. And I always have to call it Ruben, PQR, and the Project VRC guys, right? Smackdown comments. I told him I would on Twitter again. So we took like 11 members, everyone from cost analysis to from a strategy architecture on my side to implementers, all the way across the board. We ran all those products through the ringer, full production type environments, and at the end of it, we had never had this on a product selection. Usually there's always the gnashing of teeth and hair pulling at the end, trying to come down to a product solution. Everyone across the board decided that Symantec was our best product to go forth with application virtualization. And so we had like 40 rating areas. The big things out of those were packaging success rate, because we packaged our applications during this proof of concept pilot stages, performance, application performance, my management, and also the support we got from the vendors. Another important thing I think to take into consideration here is we were a view shop, so we owned ThinApp free and clear with our licensing. So we chose to not use ThinApp and to use Symantec, even though it was ThinApp would have been a no-cost solution to us. Single image benefits. So what have I gained from getting to that single image? Storage reduction, my recompose time, again, down to not only do I have to, if I'm just doing it at one location, across multiple locations, the admin overhead. Sean talked about some of this a little bit in his session the other day too, about reducing the actual admin overhead of actually rebuilding that image. That can be multiple FTEs in a large environment just to keep up with image updates, whether for your PVS or link clones, that master image replica. And kind of here too, the way the solution's working out with application virtualization and streaming, my image build process is really easy too, because I have a build account that I provision the applications that are supposed to be on this image to. I bring up that image, I log in once with that build account, and the server does everything else. It installs all my applications that are configured there, seal the image, I'm ready to go. Next month when it's time to do it again, I just open it up, and if there's any changes to those applications, it really simplifies our image build process. And so going to the single image also greatly simplifies support. Instead of having 100 different images, this is obviously a driver of VDI too, right? That helps there. Your support personnel, they know exactly what they're seeing. And then we add a layer of application virtualization on the top of it, and the benefits you gain from there, instantly being able to reset an application or remove and reinstall from the virtual layer area. Greatly simplified our support, and I'll talk about too how our complete support model changed and the money it saved us as well. A little change. Okay, so kind of the bottom line of this project, we ended up saving about $40 a user over that physical desktop implementation, which for us, and I know cost models, you can shift them every which way, but at the end of the day, we took physical hardware into consideration, what it costs us to deploy that, what it costs us to support it, and all the infrastructure. And obviously, when we're doing at the kind of scale we were doing, we were getting good pricing. But at the end of the day, we ended up saving about $40 per user versus a physical desktop. So in addition to that, we had saw big savings in our support costs because we completely eliminated our level 1 support, which for us was a contract basis. We paid like per desktop per user, so we paid whatever the price, but we paid a contract for that every user. So every user we rolled from a physical desktop into the virtual desktop environment, we now recoup that cost from that support from there. So they no longer had a level 1 support. We just had our level 2 VDI support. Since the users, you do a non-persistent environment, they have problems, they can reboot. Even before that, we have on the application virtualization layer, they can reset their applications. And kind of starting from scratch, I'm sure if you guys have done VDI projects, that's where you start your kind of build process all from over. You do application rationalization all over. You take away admin rights. You do all those other little things that you do to get to implement VDI. And the overall supportability of your environment and the stability is greatly increased. That's all the projects I've done, we've seen that. We also eliminated we eliminated our tier 1. We also eliminated, we were still doing some desktop delivery, we had the delivery guys who actually came out, had to install, hook up a physical PC, right? We also still had desk side support that came to sneakernet, hand install some applications. If it was, under whatever 1,000 users, they just walked out and installed it. We didn't package it or deliver it via SCCM or anything. So that got us out of that model. We eliminated those costs as well. The other big thing was Windows 7 compatibility. When we virtualized these applications, we found that a lot of our applications that said they weren't Windows 7 compatible, that vendors require support contracts, a lot of custom homegrown type applications. They wanted a lot of money, right, to go back and recode those applications, make them Windows 7 compatible. And a lot of times they're just simple things that by virtualizing those applications, we got around and got them to run on our Windows 7 environment. So we deferred or saved like $20 million in just software update costs. Some other benefits of Symantec. It's better XP migration because of some of those compatibility things. We had already taken those applications that were the kind of stopgaps where we kept us from going to Windows 7 by virtualizing those. Sped out that. It's the same packages and the process for all of our environments, whether if it was Citrix, if it was Windows 7 or Legacy XP. The same package worked across all those iterations. We also allowed us to have multiple versions of the same application on the same image or the same box. So that being able to create those, and Symantec has I'm not familiar with it, has a normally open model. So whereas a lot of the other application virtualization vendors, have their bubble and you have to poke things through it. Theirs is a completely different model. It's open by nature, and then you can close down things that you want to close down. So that would allow us to actually run, put an extra version of JRE on the box that was tied specific to one application because it had a JRE compatibility issue. And then it also got us around the security guys by the only way into that JRE bubble is from that one application. So it allowed us to use that. When I build my Citrix servers, my Xenap servers, I don't physically touch them. I try to, from old installation manager or the new Xenap connector or SWS, I don't like hand installing anything on my Citrix servers. I don't have to. So you can see stability improvements from application virtualization on our Citrix servers, just like we're seeing on the base builds. Proven agility to react to business needs. So a little story here about when we were first starting this project was about the time, I think we had maybe 10,000 users into the environment and 8,000, 9,000 users at the time around Isaac happened. And one of the groups we were doing this with happened to be our Southwest call centers. And they got wiped out in that Isaac. And all of our applications were very categorized. You had Southeast, Southwest. So these call centers were very specific to which area they governed, right? Since we had these applications in there already from the call center area that was affected, all we did was provision those applications back over to our other call centers, and they were immediately taking calls from our call centers that were impacted. And from that, our ideas kind of grew, and we turned this into a whole DR plan. And actually, in the long run, we ended up having just one big model that all the call centers could basically take calls from any other area. So since we had implemented that model, started that model, by the time Sandy came around, we were there and ready for that, and there was a bunch of stuff with us in the news about how our services weren't interrupted. We were taking calls for other vendors. So it really, that business agility aspect of it really proved out for us. Security practice is kind of what I talked about before. When you go through this whole process, right, you go through VDI, you go through application virtualization, you take those admin rights away from users. It helps you as a catalyst, right, to help implement some of those security practices that would be hard to do politically. And it's, there's different models, right, in the semantic versus streaming, semantic virtualization. If you are an SCCM shop and that's what you want to do and not use the other tools, and got some other new tools with the application portal, you can deliver via SCCM and activate a layer through SCCM. So some more specific examples of how it helped us. Application rationalization. We had whole departments that are responsible for application rationalization. So we ended up, I'll talk about the first one too, is just exception processing. So we had our normal applications, right? But if you wanted, Google Chrome because you do web development and you need to test Google Chrome against to make sure your web page shows up okay, it's an exception process. You have to file paperwork. Somebody has to approve that. Somebody has to allow you to deliver that application to you, depending on how many users it is. Do we package it? Do we deliver it? Do we allow the users to install it themselves? Do we give them elevated admin rights? The whole process that goes along with that. Plus then there's tracking. Is it a 1 month, 3 month, 6 month exception? I have to follow up. Is it actually, did you remove it from your PC? Do I have to go back and remove it from your PC? So they estimated that this saved them 10,000 man hours in a year just from exception processing, because now I just provision that user to Google Chrome in the console, and I can have 6 versions of Google Chrome if they want. They can have all of them on there. They can switch back and forth between them. I immediately know if there's a 0-day vulnerability that's released for that, and I decide, okay, there is no more Google Chrome in my environment. I can immediately turn it off. The user has no access to that. Just as an application rationalization business process, just completely changed the way we did application rationalization and exception processing. Another one, and this, like, you build this stuff, right, and then you have people knocking on your door for solutions. We didn't even go out looking for these. I did a developer environment. It was, they had 20 developers, but it took them essentially 2 weeks to set up their desktop environment. So at the start of every project, and I think they did like about 4 projects a year, and these are all contractors, it took them 2 weeks to set up their development environment. we took those applications, this core application set that they used in their environment, virtualized them. Now it takes them minutes to set up that environment. So that's 40 man hours times whatever it was, 20 or 40 contractors times 4 contractors or 4 projects a year at a contracting rate, right? Saves a lot of money in the long run. 32,000, I had it down there, 32,000 contract man hours. You know how much a contract developer costs. So. Some other things, some things we didn't really think about. We didn't really have an official bring your own device standard policy. We've talked about it, but can never really get the backing behind it. And this is more I guess, of a VDI benefit, also from the title. But we started seeing users. I know I did it myself. I've got a MacBook sitting back there that the company hadn't bought me a desktop or a laptop in 5 years because I was bringing my own device on my own with no company stipend. The other thing we saw from BDI is we actually saw a 30% reduction in our WAN traffic by moving all that application stuff to the data center. And we were concerned at first. The reason we were tracking all this and making sure is like, okay, now I have all this screen scrapes, right, going back and forth to the data center. What's my end result going to be? Do I have to upgrade WAN links? And we were relatively surprised at the end of this, looking back at a couple years worth of data, that we had actually reduced our WAN traffic by like 30% by consolidating that all back to the data center. And we had a large Citrix environment too. Have 150,000 users using Citrix, so a lot of that was already in the data center. But by getting the web browsing, the email, all that other basic stuff, moving that into the data center as well, we ended up reducing our WAN traffic by 30%. The other thing, since you're doing all that web browsing and stuff from the actual data center, we saw a major reduction in our branch office internet links. So since there's not traffic coming out from those branch office locations, and it's all coming from the data center. Okay. So I'll turn it back over. Well, I guess any questions for me? Yeah, sure. I think the largest one we did was about 2 gigs. I think it was the whole SCCM console and all the tools and everything altogether. I think it was like 2 gigs, which was deployed on a limited basis, right? That was a stream on demand application because it was just to specific users. But yeah, we packaged that. It was like 2 gigs.
Yeah, I've seen upwards of 18 gigs Creative Suite with entire solution sets and fonts and all of the themes, everything installed in it. I've seen AutoCAD with all the design templates in place in. So seeing quite large applications been virtualized. Though they haven't been, the large applications were locally cached. So they're delivered through standard delivery, not streamed.
So what did you end up putting in the image? You said you got down to 6 million.
So, I mean, all the basic Office, we had about 239 applications, I think, in that base image. And then, so we kind of decided between size, availability, things like that, things that were streamed on demand and what was in the base image. Yeah, I think we had 239 applications in that base image. Not all users were provisioned for every one of those applications, but it was cached locally in that image itself.
It was fairly heavy.
I'm sorry?
It was fairly application heavy.
Yes, yes. Yep.
Last question, you talked about the Windows 7 compatibility and vendor support and that type of thing. Did you have any problems getting vendors to support the applications in an SWS virtualization container?
We didn't have any problems. That was one of our thoughts, right, in the same thing. If I can make this run in Windows 7. And for the most part, we went to management and said, hey, okay, if we run into a problem and it's that dire, right, we'll just replicate it in our Windows XP physical environment or whatever it is, and then call support in. But we never had actually any specific problems with vendors, because normally they're looking at the problem, they don't even realize that it's.
So typically what happens is that if you think about if it's causing a problem with your Windows 7 machine, then you simply turn off the layer, and does the problem still exist or not? And typically if the problems are happening in the layer, then most of the customers will actually contact Symantec, and we will identify and try to address the issue. So that's typically the scenario. And then if it works in XP, then you can contact, if it doesn't work in XP, then you can contact the vendor directly with the software. So it's a case of where the problem lies. If it's in the operating system, you switch off the layer, does it still occur or not? If it's within the layer, then Symantec would be the ones to contact.
I'll go back to I think I had support on one of those decisions why we went to Symantec. Spent many hours on the phone with that man right there. We've got outstanding support from Symantec, specific issues, trying to help us, certain ways to package applications, and that they're a big part of how we got to that 100% of packaging applications.
Okay. Thank you very much. So just on the packaging side, it's a very good question, because packaging is always a very important part of getting to VDI, is getting those applications ready. One of the reasons why I'm doing this role over the years is that many years ago, I was responsible for a application packaging factory. And during the time that I was responsible for the factory, we actually packaged about 20,000 applications. So we actually created MSI packages and virtual packages. After initial time, we started learning some of the best practices, which we've released on our knowledge base and articles, etc., that explain about some of the best practices about what to virtualize and what not to virtualize. And when you get to an application, maybe not virtualizing the entire application, but pieces of the application. So there's really good information out there that we've actually constructed because of a result of that packaging factory that we had. I've met with many customers in the last couple of months that I've been doing this role. I've pretty much been traveling. I've been traveling nonstop actually since I've taken this position on. And out of all the customers that I've met, we've actually had the highest success rate of virtualizing applications. And not just applications, but actually application configurations as well. So by, maybe I don't want to virtualize the entire application. Maybe I want to have Adobe physical installed, virtual installed, whatever delivery methods I want the users to install it themselves, or I want to deliver it through SSAM or Altiris. But they virtualize the configurations of the application, and then that virtual configuration, virtual layer, can apply to physical or virtual application. And therefore make sure you keep a standard set of, turning off auto update, turning off certain features, locking it down, etc. So you can apply it to whether it's a virtual or physical application. The other side of it as well was the ability to virtualize like Office plugins, Link, so that you can actually deliver those to users without them requiring reboots as well. So a lot of the Office extensions and plugins to give them ability to do like LinkedIn integration or social networking integration without them having to restart the application. You can actually put those in layers and deliver them on the fly. So we're not impacting user productivity. So moving a little bit, one of the things I'm going to talk about, some of the things we've done in the last couple of weeks since I've been doing this role, and we're actually very close to releasing our next major update of the product set. So we're actually about to release our 7.5 version of the product set, and the 7.5 version includes several different major updates. It includes a new streaming console, and one of the big areas of the streaming console that we really focused at was around more openness, better web services, more APIs, and that allows, rather than we provide, you'd have to go into the console to do the work. You can simply integrate that into some of your own tools that you already use, whether it's workflows or other web services. You can pull that data in, and I've got a really good live example of that today. We've also provided an updated virtual composer, which makes it much more easier to create virtual applications and to make those edits, which I'll show you a demonstration of today as well. And we've also done some integration into a self-service portal. So one of the key areas is that we have a self-service portal, which is just virtual applications. But users, when they come in to get IT services, what you don't want to provide them is multiple portals to go to. I got to go to get my physical applications here. I got to do my service desk, pass-through, resets, VPN requests here. I got to go do VDI requests here, etc. So what we've done is we've worked with vendors out there, and we've actually created a single-stop self-service portal that you can do all of those things, whether it's physical applications or virtual applications or streamed applications. The end user doesn't really care about what form that you're delivering the application in. They just care about getting the application. And that's some of the transparency that we've actually solved through the technology and updates that we're providing. So one of the things I'm going to show you is about virtualizing applications. So show you how easy it is. Who's been a packager in the past? Any packagers in the room? So you've been using what, Wise Package Studio, Admin Studio, which Install Shield. Okay. So you're familiar with packaging. I'm going to go through some of the concepts here about how to package a virtual application and how easy it is. And then how to take those applications and then provide it into a user self-service portal. Okay. So there's two ways of creating a virtual application today. One is using the Semantic Virtual Composer, which allows you to take a executable or an MSI, or even just the configuration, as I mentioned earlier, maybe not just creating a package, but just creating a virtual configuration, or even sending your corporate templates or your screensavers and your images down. You can virtualize those and keep them updated, doing the same methods. So you can use that using Semantic Virtual Composer. And one of the latest updates that we just had recently as well, we've now integrated into Admin Studio as well. So the Admin Studio virtualization pack now includes the Semantic virtualization format. So when you're going through and creating your packages through Admin Studio, it's a simple checkbox, and at the end of that, we'll create a semantic virtual package. So then you can deliver it through traditional software management, portals, or streaming. Okay. So I've got a machine here, which I'll move to, and show you how easy it is to create a virtual package. So basically, one of the first parts here is this is a package that's already opened, but I'm going to go here, and we have a set of wizards, and there's multiple ways that you can create a virtual package. You can either use a simple wizard, and using this wizard, you've got three options. One option is creating an application package, which is basically taking an MSI and getting a virtual package in the end. The other option here is doing a metering package, and the metering package is the ability to send a package down to machine and do, checking whether is SEP running, or checking whether an application has been used, and then determining if the application isn't been used in X amount of time, maybe I want to remove that from a machine and save licensing costs. So you can use virtual metering packages to do those types of tasks. Or you can create an upgrade package. So for example, if I've got virtualized Office, and I've got a 2 gig Office file, and I do an update to my package, well, it's only changed by 10, 20 megs. But I don't want to send a new 2 gig file down. So you actually create a differential package that only contains those changes and deliver those to the virtual layer. And that allows you to do simple, basically large distributions and reducing your actual complexity and bandwidth of updating packages and having to do the full rollout again. So in this case, we're just going to do a quick application package. And it's going to go, let's say Adobe is my package. Let's say 11. I'll go and choose my package itself. Let's see, should have some software in this machine somewhere. Well, I should have software. Let's see. Let's go ahead and do something. Let's do Office. In this case, rather than actually running the Office executable, some of the best practices basically is going in and doing it from the command line, which gives you a bit more control over what you do. So a couple of things here that capturing the command line will actually launch the command line. Then whatever you do afterwards will be captured in that layer and then captured basically into the virtual package itself. A template will create basically some of the actual configuration options, whether you want to have it auto-activate during startup, or you want to have it hidden from other layers, or you want to have an isolation, etc. And then compiling itself. So I'm not going to compile this time. I'm just going to capture. And what this will do is launch into command line prompt. So now we're actually in capture mode. And any changes we make at this point will actually be captured into the layer. Oops. Let's see what we got. Okay. So now any changes we make, so basically I'm going to move into and just run the Office setup file. So we accept the agreement, go through, we can do customize, and then what we can do through is choose which pieces that we want to virtualize. So rather than virtualizing all the components, you can go and say just Word, or OneNote, or Outlook, or PowerPoint, and then capture the details, and then go through the installation. Once you've captured, I'm not going to go through the entire, it'll take us some time to install Office. Once we go through, once this finishes the execution, and it closes, and then we exit from the command line, then it will actually create the virtual layer. And now we'll have a project that we can go and make changes to. So I'm going to open one that we already have. That's here. I'll go back to my Adobe. So some of the things is after you've captured that package and the changes that you've been collecting, you can go through, and there's a couple of things you can do. You can actually go and find the excludes, because what you don't want is, when you save files, you don't want them to go into the layer. You want them to go to the user's file system or user's directory. So some of these extensions and excludes allows you to make sure that those applications, the files that you're creating, like a Word doc or an email or a saving of a PowerPoint, you want those to go onto the file system in the user's profile area. So we have a find excludes, which will automatically go through and find all the exclusions, and then you can add those to the layer automatically. So that will add those to make sure that they don't get saved in the layer. The layer properties is where you can actually go and make some customizations and changes. So those who are familiar with packaging, you may want to include templates or themes, or you may want to include fonts, or you may want to include some registry settings that will change the way the application interacts with the environment. So here you can go and add files to the file system. You can also make registry changes. So I can go and right-click and add in different registry keys for disabling auto-update, or making some protection changes or configuration or menu items changes or locking it down. You can also go and look at the exclude entries and add exclude entries. Maybe you want to exclude certain drives from the system as well. You've also got dependent layers is one of the areas that I use for my configuration. So for example, here, when I capture for Adobe, I'll capture Adobe by its basic no de facto changes. Then I'll have a dependent layer, which will actually have the configuration changes. And that allows me to now have one layer which applies to multiple versions of Adobe that will make those changes. And then you can also do auto runs as well. The streaming settings is all about basically preparing the application for streaming. So the streaming details about the vendor, the application, what operating systems that you want this to be supported on, the application shortcuts that you want to be displayed to the user. So when they actually go to the portal, there'll be shortcuts that will actually be displayed that they actually can launch for the application. And then the streamlets is a very important area, because what happens is that you want the application to be as fast performing as possible. And the streamlet actually contains the startup of the information about what the application will actually need to launch first. And therefore, when the user clicks it from the portal, the application will actually be intelligent enough to know which bits of the application to send onto the user in order to make that application very seamless and not look like it's coming down and delayed and taking a while to get down the machine. That will actually make the actual user acceptability very high. And we've done some statistics, and we're actually the fastest at streaming the applications over multiple times because of the learning factor that we actually incorporate into the product. and then the events, and then you finally compile the application. Once you've compiled it, you'll end up with a layer, which I've got Adobe here. So this is a layer, then you can activate and disable it, and basically activating it will make it look like it's natively installed. It's on the machine, it's working, it will interact, so you can actually do all the functionality. And deactivating it will make it as if it's never been installed in the machine, ever. So all the traces of that application will be gone. So some of the other things you can do is if you want to make changes, open up the application and make the changes, and then close it down, you can actually add a new reset point. We'll actually take those changes and put them into the read-only layer. And you can also have on-the-fly changes to how the layer interacts with other applications. You can also have it activate on startups. When the user logs on, the application will be available to them. Or that the application will be published on their desktop as an icon, but only when they click on the icon will it then stream down to the machine and then launch. So the application has only been published with the file associations, but not physically installed. So that's simply the creation of the applications and on the machine. So if I can go here and simply basically by right-clicking here and activating Adobe, what you should see is Adobe basically appearing on the desktop as an active application. So it's gone. Let's take Firefox. So there you see Firefox and Adobe now appearing in the desktop as if it's been installed by simply just turning it on like a light switch, an application been appearing. So now you've got your virtualized application. Now you want to deliver it to users. So one of the things that we've done here, and this is some of the things that I've been involved in just the last few weeks, is the power of the APIs that we've done. So the APIs that we've created, the web services, allows you to basically plug into those APIs and actually go through and integrate them into whatever way of delivering your self-service portals that you may have today. Whether you're using SSAM self-service portal, or whether you're using Altiris or anything else that you've got out there. So what you've got here is basically, in this video I'm going to be playing here, is this is the streaming console. So this is the new 7.5 streaming console. So it's showing you a couple of packages that we have in this machine here. So there's things like FileZilla, WinRAR, OpenOffice, and a couple of other applications that are there. And we've also got 2 users provisioned, and this is also integrates into Active Directory. So if you've got AD, you don't need to go and create the users, you just sync it up with your Active Directory and pull the users and groups in, and you can provision applications to those users. So I'll just move it kind of quickly along here. So I've got a couple of users with different applications provisioned for them. Now, when they log onto the self-service portal, what you'll see here on the right-hand side, Joe Blogs has got several applications already pre-provisioned for him. So basically, those applications, all he needs to do is click on the launch button, and that will stream that application down and launch in the machine. One of the great things that you can also include in here is to one-time execution only, so that when they only want to use something that's expensive application one time only, you can actually have it so that when they close the application down, that'll be completely removed from the machine. So things like maybe Creative Suite or AutoCAD or Visio or Project, that they only use it intermittently, that you can actually have it as one-time execution only. So therefore, what you're doing is minimizing the risks of things like when vulnerabilities come out, when you need to patch those applications. Well, that application is not on the user machine. It's only on the machine when they actually are executing or actively using it. So helping you reduce your license costs and helping you also increase your security. Now, on the left-hand side here that we just clicked on, so on the left-hand side, this is the App Store for anything that the user wants to get. Whether they want to go and reset a password, whether they want to get a mobile application, they're accessing this from the mobile device, whether they want to get a physical application, whether they want to get a VDI, a virtual machine, whether they want to go and get an Office 365 account. This is the one-stop location where a user can go and get any IT services. And what we've done with the web services, we've actually integrated the applications. So the actual catalog, all the applications that we've got provisioned on the streaming server, gets pushed into this catalog automatically. And then you get the ability to see applications in this format, where it gives you screenshots, it gives you details, it gives you alternative, cheaper applications. So if I'm looking at Visio, it will say, oh, do you want Visio Viewer? It's free. Here's another application you can choose if you only want to use it for the cheaper portion. If they're already provisioned, the icon up here will already show a launch, so they can actually go ahead and launch because they've already been provisioned for this application. Let's move a little bit through some of the details. But if they get to an application where they don't have access, there's various different catalog search criteria that you can do, whether by operating system type or by application category, whether it's development tools or HR tools or finance, etc. So now you've got another application here which the user is not provisioned for. They don't have access to. Now you have to remember that the user doesn't care whether it's virtualized or physical or not. They just want this application. And this ability allows them to go and request this application. And what we're doing is in the background is we're checking, does this machine have the ability to deliver a virtual application to? If yes, we'll deliver the virtual application. If not, we'll actually use SSAM or Altiris to deliver the application through software distribution. So we're more intelligent to actually look at what the machine's running and deliver the appropriate application to that machine that will run. So here you see there's also an approval process in the back end. So the actual user, you can actually put a complex approval process, whether it's going off and doing a license request, whether it's going off and doing cost center analysis, and pulling that data back into the approval process. In this case, we've just done a very simple one for the demonstration. So it's an auto approval because of free software. So they have access to it. So now when basically the approval process is complete, which actually takes seconds, they go back to the screen here and they can now see the application is now provisioned for them to use. So this is taking another step towards making it more easier for the user to get access to the environment, whether they're going to get a virtual VDI environment with a remote desktop from this screen, or whether they're going to get an application delivered direct to the machine. The great thing about this is it allows you to enable VDI, enable application compatibility issues, but also allows you to actually enable BYOD. Because I be coming into the company with my own laptop. I can go to this store, and as long as I have the prerequisites, the delivery agent on the machine, I can get the applications delivered directly to my own personal machine. Now the key area is that we have the ability to put a time to live within the application, and we associate it with the Active Directory account. So as long as the time to live is enabled, and as long as the Active Directory account is enabled, then I can have access to the application on my personal device. Once my Active Directory account gets disabled and the time to live is met, then that application is no longer on that machine. That's the key area, is the ability to control the delivery of the applications to BYOD and also ensure they can actually remove them when you no longer want them on those devices. So we've got many use cases, scenarios. So it's important that when you get into looking at virtualization of VDI and application virtualization and streaming, that you look at the wider area, that you want to be able to get one solution that will actually allow you to do VDI and enable VDI and reduce costs, but also allow you to do the virtualizing of applications and get compatibility and moving forward with operating systems, and also deliver BYOD at the same time. So in that case, if there's any questions about this, I'm going to move over to Chris, who's going to show you a little more about actually from the mobility side of things. Because this primarily the front office here, which I'm showing you, and the virtual applications is very targeted the laptops and desktop side, and the virtual machines, and the terminal services and Citrix environments. And now we're going to go through and show a little bit more how we're actually solving it on mobile devices as well.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. So, guys, just a little bit about me while we're getting ready here. So prior to my current role, a couple of years back.
It's quite short. So
yes, I'll do my best here to hook up. So prior to my current role, I was an SE specialist for the product that Joe was actually talking about. And now I'm part of the product management group for enterprise mobility. And it was those similarities that, you hear Joe talk a lot about BYOD, and it's the similarities that drew me to the mobile group that I'm hoping you're going to recognize in the product I'm going to show you today. Joe, can I close this down?
You can close it down completely.
Yeah. It's those similarities that I'm hoping you're going to see, and literally because what we're talking about here is we're talking about providing users access to resources they need regardless of platform, right? And a little twist you're going to see here with what the product that we call App Center is the added levels of security that we can apply to applications. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how we can both deliver applications, secure applications on mobile devices, as well as provide a robust and dynamic ability to enable MDM on mobile devices as well. So we'll talk about all of those things and as much as we have in the time we have together. So I just want you to look here. I'm going to show you, start with our administrative console for App Center. and just show you that what you see here is I've got several different types of applications in this list. And just as Joe is showing you with the streaming and virtualization product, I have the ability to entitle these applications to different users based on who they are and what their function is. Obviously, different users require different applications. And we'll talk about these different types of applications. Right now, I'm going to focus on one in particular, which is a in-house developed application. It's just a demo application, just to be upfront with you guys. And it's just to show you the concepts that we're going to be talking about today. And you'll see that this application right now, if you look, I've got actually a policy section in the upper left-hand corner there. And right now, no policy is applied to this application. So not only can we deliver these applications and provide access to the applications through a very recognizable and easy-to-use app store, such as mobile users have become accustomed to with Google Play and the iTunes App Store. But what we can also do is we can effectively apply policy to these applications so that we can protect the data and the user's interaction with these applications. Okay? And I'll show you at first, I've delivered this application to my device with no policy whatsoever. And within this application, I've got a demo document that's privileged and confidential. But you'll see that what I have the ability to do is I have the ability to copy text from this application. I've also got the ability to open with or open in this application or move this application to any other application on the device that is compatible with it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you that if I do go back to the console, and what I can do is I can what we call wrap the application. Now this is really interesting and unique to what we do. As opposed to, say, protecting the application with an MDM profile or stuffing it in a container that has rules onto itself, what we can actually do is we can wrap the application with its own policy. So not only can we manage the device and dynamically manage the device with whatever MDM capabilities exist on that platform, but what we can also do is very granularly, and I'm going to show you all the policies as well, I can very granularly add policy to this specific application and therefore further protecting and adding as much protection as I desire. And what you'll see is I actually have a pre-configured policy here called block clipboard operations, basically, right? So I'm going to apply that policy. And what you'll see here is in the upper left-hand side, you'll see that what it's doing is it says it's wrapping the application. Now, keep in mind that I don't have to do anything different or engineer the application in any different way than I, as a developer, would normally engineer the application. There's nothing I have to code to make this wrapping work. You notice that I add a check mark to the application icon as well. That's denoting to me that what I've done is I've taken that application and I've added policy to it. And now what you'll see is if I go back into my App Store, I've actually got an APS notification here. And this APS notification is going to tell me that I can update this application, and I'm going to simply just click Update here and update the application. And now what's happening is it's updating the application with the new wrapper policy on here. And now when I go to open this application, I won't be able to do what you saw me do before, which is copy text or open the document that's in that application, because the wrapper that's surrounding that is unable to, is stopping that action from happening. It's keeping that operation from happening. So again, what we can do is we can sit as a shim in between the application and the operating system and interrupt any calls that violate the policy that I've selected for that particular application. So now you'll see when I start this, and I go to open this attachment, I'm now incapable of actually copying text. I'm actually pushing it, you can't see that, and I'm actually pushing the open with and open in, and I simply cannot do that. It's telling me this is prohibited by policy from me doing this, okay? So again, just to go back to in conclusion here, I just want to show you guys that what I can do is I can add this app policy. I've got a lot of granularity here in the policy. You'll see that there's much more that I can add other than blocking clipboard operations. We can add user authentication. We can also have our own jailbreak detection for each individual application, as well as we can, on a very granular basis, decide on a user-by-user or group-by-group basis whether or not we want to actually enable and enforce mobile device management on each individual device as well. So we give you many layers of granularity where you can apply security and how you can apply security to the device, as well as giving you that seamless ability to deliver applications to end users based on their entitlement. With that, I'll just turn it back to Joe.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So at that point, it's kind of we want to just highlight, through the presentation today and some of the information is about some of the areas that we're actually helping solve across the end of the complete end-to-end side of things, where we've got virtualization, we've got BYOD, and also mobility as well. So at this point in time, we're going to open it up for questions. Going through this information today, is there anything that anyone have any questions at this time, or any further information you would like to have? So we have Chris and Steve come up if there's questions for yourselves as well. So.
You mentioned some best practices for application packaging. Is that
correct?
Is it information that you have published, or is that just kind of in-house?
It's information we've actually published. So I've actually created, so if you're familiar with Symantec and some of the way we publish information, we have on Symantec Connect. Let's see. If I'm connected here. The Wi-Fi is not connected in here, is it? Okay. So on the Symantec Connect portal, which is basically symantec.com/connect, there's a virtualization group called the Endpoint Virtualization and Streaming. And within that group, we've actually got the largest community on Symantec. So we've got the largest interactive community who's providing best practices and knowledge and information about how to package applications, best practices, what not to virtualize, some of the difficult packages that you can virtualize as well. So I wrote an article, a best practice article, which basically goes through is that the first thing you want to identify is what you're trying to solve from best practices. What are you trying to deliver to VDI? Are you trying to deliver direct to the users? Are you trying to so what's your overall solution you're trying to deliver it to? Then the second question is what's your overall use case for virtualizing applications? Are you trying to migrate from XP to Windows 7? So it's about application compatibility. Is it about license compliance? Is it about creating a self-service portal like I just demonstrated today? Am I looking to provide on-demand applications? Or am I looking to do application rental or applications as a service? So it really comes down to understanding which use case you're trying to solve with application virtualization. And then that will determine whether you want to deliver it through whether you want to deliver it also through standard software distribution, or whether you want to stream it as well. Because standard software distribution allows you to send it down to the machine, and then you would have to basically, it'll be locally cached on all the machines you want to deliver it to. Streaming allows you to do real-time license compliance, on-demand application service, etc. So streaming allows you to solve other problems. Then once you've identified of what you're going to virtualize and how you're going to deliver it kind of for the use cases, then the next step is that what applications do you have? And I always start with the applications at the beginning that you cannot virtualize. So, I mean, I've been to many customers, and one that I went to recently who virtualized 300 and something applications. They had 2 failures of 2 applications out of those 300 plus that they could not virtualize because they had very low level hardware drivers. So it comes down to basically is that we have got a filter driver that the logic is that if we start before the application driver, then it can be virtualized. But if that driver is low level in hardware, then it becomes difficult to virtualize. So that's you can do a quick inventory of what drivers you have out there and look at the altitude, and that will quickly allow you to identify if you can virtualize that or not. So it comes down to when that loads in the kernel. If it loads after us, then it can be virtualized. And then I get into complexity as well, is that applications which are running just in user mode or running just in the operating system is just an executable versus applications that you repackage and customize. And then you get into more difficult applications which have client-server connectivity or some sort of encryption, or you've got some security methods that can become a little bit more difficult to package, but can be packaged.
Keep in mind the Connect site too, just to add to what Joe's saying, is it's not just a knowledge dump from Symantec to out you. It's years of knowledge from users of the product to SEs, to developers, there's several people who take part in Connect. So there's a huge wealth of knowledge on that.
Because I started collecting statistics, and I was a bit shocked. So the Connect, when I took this role on, the first thing I did was I took the statistics from our Connect group. We've got about almost 800 registered users on the community who are active participating. We get 35,000 page hits a month, over 8,000 downloads of the virtual layers per month. And I get about 300 features a month from community as well. So I get a lot of active work for me to do in the end. But so it's very, very highly utilized community, very active, and it's a lot of not just data consumption, but data creation and community providing a lot of information back into the base as well. Is there a question in the back?
Is there a library of prepackaged apps as well on Connect?
So the question is there a was it available library online for virtual applications? There's a couple of things. There is some applications up there that they've already made available which are virtualized. There's a couple of partners who actually make those available for us. I know in Europe we've got what's called this SVS Downloads, which is a site which already have prepackaged applications. And a couple of vendors who provide services to package applications for customers and companies. And there also is the layer definition files as well. So for example, for some, a layer definition file is the instructions of how to virtualize the application, and it pulls the source of the file from the vendor source, install source. So you can use the layer definition file. So there's a list of 40 plus out of the box, including all the browsers, i.e. 6 and 7 and 8, etc. And you can basically just say create the layer. We'll go off to pull down the download files and create the actual virtual layer on the fly. So there's an LDF creation as well, which helps virtualize applications also. That's part of integrated into the 7.5 release, which comes out very shortly. So, other questions? Question here?
You demonstrated the iPad. Are you supporting Android at this point?
Yes. Everything that I showed you is supported for the mobility product is supported for Android right now. And then we're examining what we can do with the Surface and the future releases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so let's thank our speakers. Thank you, Symantec, for a great session.